I grew up without a name, or at least that's how I felt. Nobody called me for something that meant more than presents. Boy, hey you, it was always like this, as if I were just one of many who passed through the village's stone streets. Forgotten before even being remembered, my life has always been simple. Hard work from an early age, carrying bags of grain, cleaning stables, fetching water in the cold of the morning. Nothing special, nothing that caught attention. And maybe it would be better this way. Because in the village, everything that stood out ended badly. People whispered too much, they watched too much, and they judged without needing a reason, so I learned to put my head down, not looking in the eyes. Not to ask, just follow, just exist. My mother said it was protection, that the world outside was worse than anything I'd ever seen, that there were names that should not be said, stories that shouldn't be told, and people who disappeared when someone started asking too many questions I never fully understood, but I also never questioned, because she always seemed scared when she brought up these topics. As if even the wind could hear and tell someone she didn't talk about my father, never. And when I asked, she looked away, changed the subject, or just tell me to be silent. So I stopped asking. I came to accept that some things simply had no answer, or they couldn't have. The years passed like this, equal days, same nights, no expectation of change, no big dreams, because dreaming also seemed dangerous. And that's exactly why that day broke everything. It was a cold morning, the kind of cold that gets into your bones and stays there all day. I was at the grocery store helping to unload a car when I heard the sound horses. It wasn't uncommon, but there was something different to firm rhythm to organized. I looked up without thinking, and I saw armed men wearing the castle colors. They didn't come to the village often, and when they came, it was never for something good. The entire market was silent, as if everyone shared the same thought problem. The riders stopped in the center, one of them went down. Armor shined, even under the cloudy sky. He didn't seem tired from the trip, not distracted. His eyes roamed every face, analyzing, choosing. I lowered my head immediately, as I always did, but something inside me didn't want to stay still, a strange sensation as if the air had changed. As if that moment was different from all the others, the man began to walk among the people, slow observing until it stops. I felt it before I even understood. His footsteps stopped too close. I held my breath waiting for him too. Thought out to choose someone else, that I would continue to be nobody. But that's not what happened, boy. His voice was firm, authoritarian. I looked up slowly. No courage, no choice. He stared at me direct, as if he already knew who I was. What's your name? The question seemed simple, but my body reacted as if it were a threat name. I never had one that mattered, just what my mother used when she needed, but never out loud outside the house. I opened my mouth to respond, but before any words came out, another man behind him approached, and he said something that made the world stop. No need to ask, he took a step forward, looked directly at me and said, "We found you." The silence around became heavy, dense, unreal. I felt my heart beating too hard, confused, lost without understanding, found who I didn't even know who I was. Then he said, the name that no one had ever dared to speak, the name that made my mother tremble every time she came close to the subject. The name that didn't seem to exist, but it was there, set out. Loud, of course, inescapable. And the moment that name came on the air, I understood one thing: I was never anyone. I was just hiding until now. The sound of my own name still felt wrong inside my head, as if it didn't belong to me. As if he had been plucked from some forbidden place and thrown there in front of everyone. No one in the village was breathing properly. I could feel the stares, even without looking heavy, full of fear, but it wasn't afraid of me. It was fear of what that name meant. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "You are mistaken," I said, but even I didn't believe it. The man did not react with irritation or surprise, just took a small step closer to close his eyes. I'd no doubt it wasn't a search. It was a confirmation we didn't make mistakes, he replied. "We never make mistakes." That stopped me, because there was no arrogance in his voice. Just sure, uncertainty is more dangerous than any threat. I took a step back on instinct, but I felt another soldier's hand hold my arm steady. No unnecessary violence, but no room for resistance. My first reaction was to try and release. Not for courage, but out of fear, but it only took a second to realize it wouldn't do any good. They were there for a reason, and they wouldn't leave without me. The village remained silent. Nobody interfered. Nobody spoke, as if everyone already knew that that moment could not be interrupted, or that crime would be worse. I looked for my mother among the people, desperate, and I found. She was standing near the entrance of the House Pale property, the eyes locked on me, but there was no surprise there, no confusion, just fear, an old fear, deep, as if she had been waiting for that day, her whole life. And the moment our eyes met, I understood. She knew. I always knew. I stopped fighting the hand that held me. The body became heavy, the mind even more. So it was true, everything she avoided, everything I never said, everything that seemed exaggerated, it was there now. Before me, in the form of armed men, and a name I should never have heard come with us, said the man. It wasn't a request, but it didn't sound like a threat either. It was just the next step. I hesitated. For a single moment, then I looked at my mother again. She didn't say anything, but he made a slight movement with his head, almost imperceptible, as if accepting or saying goodbye. I didn't know. Maybe both. And that was enough. I started walking, feeling each step heavier than the last, like I'm leaving something behind. Even without knowing exactly what I was taken to the horses, the sound of boots on stone echoed louder than it should have. Or maybe it was just in my head. They put me on one of the animals. No rush, no brutality. But also without care. I was not a guest, but he wasn't treated like a common criminal either. It was something in between, something I couldn't define. The man who said my name rode right next to me. He didn't look away, like you're making sure I don't disappear, or as if you were waiting for some reaction. Something that would further confirm what he already believed. Who am I asked finally. The question came out weaker than I wanted. He was silent for a few seconds. Enough time for the sound of horses to start moving, enough time for the village to start falling behind. You are someone who should not have survived, he said. Just like that, no emotion, no explanation. That didn't help, it only got worse. Survived what I insisted. He looked ahead as if the answer was there. On the path we followed, there are things that have been erased, he said. Stories that were never told, people who were removed before they had a chance to exist. But sometimes something slips away, something stays, and when it stays, we found I felt a different cold now. Not the climate, but the kind that comes from within. As if his every word was making room for something I never knew. But it was always there, hidden, and at that moment, a memory came, weak, distant, almost non-existent, but real. One night a long time ago, screams, firelight, and my mother pulling me tight, running without looking back. I never knew if that was a dream or a memory, but now it started to make sense. I shook hands, feeling my heart race. What do you want with me? He finally looked at me again, this time with something different in your eyes, something heavier. We don't want. He took a short break, as if choosing words carefully. We need, and that only difference. It changed everything. The word we need kept echoing inside me like something I couldn't accept but also couldn't ignore. Nobody needs someone like me. That was the only certainty I had carried my whole life, and yet those men crossed village roads and maybe even kingdoms just to find me. That didn't make sense. Or maybe it made too much sense. I remained silent as the horses advanced along the dirt road, leaving the village further and further away. The sound of hooves was constant, almost hypnotic, and for the first time in a long time I didn't know what to do. There was no work to do. There was no routine to follow. Just questions and no clear answer. The cold wind cut your face, bringing the smell of the damp earth and trees around you. The landscape began to slowly change. The simple houses disappeared, giving way to open fields, and then to small hills covered in dense vegetation. It was the kind of path I'd never walked before, not because I couldn't, but because I never had a reason. Now I had, even without understanding what it was. How long until we arrive? I asked after a long silence. The man next to me responded, without looking. Before dusk. The answer was direct, but the tone carried something more, as if he knew that destiny wasn't just a place, it was a change, and maybe one that would never come back. I watched the other man. Nokon Irasawa. None seemed relaxed, even on a seemingly peaceful route. Everyone was paying attention, always as if they were waiting for something or someone. This made me realize something. They weren't just taking me, they were protecting me, and that made everything even stranger. If I were an ordinary prisoner, there would be no need for this. If I were just a nobody, there would be no reason to be so careful. So what was I? The memory of the night came back again, stronger this time. The fire was too high to be an accident. Screams that didn't just sound like fear, but out of despair, and shadows moving too fast, like men. But not like the men in the village. My breathing got heavier. I had never connected that to anything real. I always treated it as a confused fragment of childhood, but now it felt like a forgotten piece of something bigger. You were there, I said. Suddenly the voice came out. Before I could think better, the man finally turned his face to me. That night he didn't respond right away, but he didn't look away, so it was. He tilted his head. Slightly, I felt my whole body react like something is falling into place. You destroyed that. He took a deep breath. It was not destruction, it was containment. The word came loaded with weight, as if justifying something that couldn't be undone. Containment of who? From you. The answer came firmly, without hesitation, and it hit me in a way I didn't expect. Because it meant the danger was never external. It was never an enemy from outside, it was something connected to me. To that name, what I still didn't understand. I laughed without humor, a dry sound. So you're taking me to arrest me? Or finish what they started? He shook his head. If that were the case, you wouldn't be here. I frowned. It wasn't enough of an answer. So why now? Why let me leave? All these years, He looked ahead again. Because you weren't a risk until now. The silence that came after was heavy, different from everyone else, because now there was something concrete there, something I could feel, growing a new kind of fear, not to die, but to discover. What changed? I asked. He took his time this time more than before, as if I was deciding how far I could go. You started to be seen, he said, by the wrong people. I felt a chill run down my spine, and who were the right people? He didn't respond, and that was answer enough. The castle appeared on the horizon shortly after, big, imposing, much bigger than anything I've ever seen up close. The high walls seemed to swallow the sky around them, and for a moment I understood why no one in the village ever questioned what was coming from there. That wasn't just a construction, it was power, it was control, it was a constant presence. The gates opened before we even arrived, completely as if they already knew, as if they were waiting, just like those men waited for me. Just like that name was always waiting to be said, and the moment we crossed inside, I felt the same feeling as childhood. The same weight, the same different air, as if that place already knew me, even though I've never been there before, or maybe I already had, and I just didn't. Remember, as soon as I walked through the gates, I felt the weight shift. It wasn't just the size of the walls, it was a different silence. Organized, controlled. Every step inside that place seemed watched, even when there was no one looking directly. The horses slowed down as we crossed the main yard. Soldiers lined up, servants rushing by. Nobody stopped, nobody questioned, but everyone understood I was the only stranger there. And yet no one dared face it for long, as if they already knew. I wasn't just a visitor. I got off the horse when they told me to. The legs took a second to respond, the body still trying to understand that that place was now part of my reality. The man who had spoken to me throughout the trip made a simple gesture, follow, and I followed, no choice, not knowing exactly where we walked through long, cold stone corridors lit by torches stuck to the walls. The sound of our footsteps echoed rhythmically, almost like a constant warning that there was no return. Every curve looked the same, every closed door felt like it was hiding something. Not luxury, not comfort, but secrets. We stopped in front of a door bigger than the others, reinforced, no ornaments, without any visible sign of importance. But it was there I knew. He opened it without hesitation and made me come in. The interior was simple, a heavy wooden table, some chairs, and a man sitting properly waiting. He didn't wear a crown. No exaggerated clothes, but I didn't need his presence. Filled the space in a way I had never felt before. Power was not something that was shown there, it was something that was necessary. The door closed behind me with a loud sound. Echo. I stood still for a moment, not knowing whether to move forward or wait, until he spoke. So he survived. The voice was calm, but it carried something deeper. As if every word had been thought out long before it was spoken. I didn't respond, not out of defiance, but because I didn't know what to say. He got up slowly, no rush, and started walking around me, observing, as if I was something he already knew but needed to confirm up close. His eyes were even more intense. There was no doubt there, not even curious, just a recognition. You shouldn't be here, he continued. Not this way. I swallowed dry, the same sentence said differently, but with the same weight. So why am I asked this time? My voice was firmer. Maybe because of tiredness, maybe because there was no longer any reason to pretend I didn't want answers. He stopped in front of me, close enough for me to notice every detail, because something failed. He said something that doesn't fail. Never. Silence settled for a moment, but it wasn't empty, it was loaded with meaning, as if that was just the surface of something much bigger. Do you remember anything from that night? He asked. The question came straight, no preparation, without warning. I hesitated, but the images were already there. The fire, the screams, the race. I remember enough, I replied. He tilted his head, slightly, as if I expected more, but I didn't insist it was all I had or everything I could access. So that's more than it should be, he said. Turning your back for a moment, walking to the table. He placed his hands on the wood, thoughtful, like I was dealing with something I couldn't just resolve. You were born in a place that no longer exists, he continued, and it shouldn't even exist in memory. I felt my heart speed up, but I kept my face steady. Why? He looked at me again, and this time there was something different. Something that wasn't just control, it was caution, because what existed there could not spread, and still it spread. The words remained in the air, heavy, hard to ignore. You're saying I'm a mistake, I said. He didn't respond immediately, but his silence was clear. No. You are a proof of a mistake. And that was worse, much worse. I took a deep breath, trying to keep control. So what happens now? He walked back to me, stopping at a safe distance. Now we find out what you are capable of becoming. There was no threat in the sentence, but there was no choice either. And at that moment I understood I had not been brought here to be judged, not to be executed. I had been brought in to be watched, tested, and maybe if necessary, but that still wasn't the worst. The worst thing was realizing that a part of me, a part I never knew, he seemed to recognize. That place, those words, and even that man, as if all that wasn't new. Just forgotten, waiting for the right moment to return the word proof stuck in my head like something I couldn't shake. It wasn't just what he had said, it was the way I said it. As if I weren't a person, but a result. Something that arose from a mistake that no one was able to completely erase. I remained standing in front of him, trying to maintain control of my body and mind at the same time. If I showed too much fear, I would be weak. If he showed defiance, he might not leave there. So I was in the middle, observing, waiting, and that seemed to satisfy him for now. You weren't brought here by chance. Continué. Not out of curiosity, I didn't respond, but the tension in my body said enough, he realized. Of course, you noticed everything about that man seemed calculated. You will remain here, he said, until we understand the limit of what you carry. Limit, the word echoed once again. It always came back to this, to something inside me that I didn't know, and that they clearly knew better than I did. And if I don't want to, I said it was the first time I put real resistance into words, not as an impulse, but as a decision. He didn't get angry, he didn't raise his voice, he just looked at me for a few seconds, as if measuring exactly how far it would go. Then you wouldn't have been brought alive, he replied. Simple, direct, no room for interpretation. And that ended any doubt. I wasn't there by choice. I've never been. Two men entered the room without me noticing. When the door opened, silent movement. I need the same ones who brought me, or the same. It was difficult to distinguish. Take it, he said, without even looking at them. I couldn't resist this time. Not because I accepted, but because I still needed to understand, and to fight without understanding was to die too soon. I was led through the halls again, but now the path was different, deeper, more isolated. The torches were more spaced out. The weakest light, the heavier air, until we reached an area that didn't. It looked like part of the ordinary castle. The walls were older, the most irregular stone, as if that part was before the rest or hidden inside it. The door that opened before me was smaller, thicker, with marks that didn't look like they were just from use, but of containment. I entered the space. It was simple, almost empty. A wooden bed, a table, and chains attached to the wall were not being used, but they weren't there by chance. I looked around, taking in every detail, trying to understand what they expected me to do there, or what they feared I would do. The door closed behind me. The sound echoed more than it should have, and for the first time since it all began, I was alone, no eyes following me directly, no immediate orders. Just me. In that place, I slowly walked through the space, running my hand along the cold wall, trying to feel something, anything, but what came was not physical sensation. It was memory, loose fragments. Disjointed but real voices. Many whispering at the same time, words I didn't fully understand, but they looked familiar, as if I've heard it before, a long time ago. I quickly moved my hand away, breathing, accelerating. That wasn't normal. It wasn't imagination, it was something more. Something that came from within. I stared at my own hands for a moment, as if expecting to see something different in them, but they were normal, dirty, tired humanities, and still nothing really seemed normal. Hours passed, or at least they seemed, with no reference to time in there. Everything was mixed up until the door opened. Again a man entered. He was no ordinary soldier. The clothes were different, simpler, but there was something in the posture, in the look he carried. No visible weapon, just a small wooden container. He placed it on the table and watched me. "Do you know what's going on?" he asked. His voice was different, less rigid, but not friendlier. I shook my head. "So, it's better that way," he said. For now, he opened the container, revealing a dark liquid inside, a small vial. "Drink." I didn't move. "What is this?" He hesitated for a second, as if deciding how much to say. "Something that will show the truth." I let out a small, humorless laugh. "The truth of who?" he responded, "without deviating yours." Silence returned, heavy, dense, but this time different, because now there was a choice, even if small, even if limited. I looked at the bottle, then for him, then into my hands. If that really showed something, I couldn't go back to what I was before. But maybe I no longer could anyway. Bottle. I held it for a moment, feeling the weight was too light for something that seemed so important. And without saying anything, I drank. The taste was bitter, strong, wrong, came down, burning. And for a second, nothing happened. Then everything happened at the same time. The world around me distorted. The walls seemed to move away. The light disappeared, and the voices came back, highest, clearer. And this time, I understood. They weren't around me. They were inside me. The voices didn't speak at the same time by chance. There was a rhythm, an order hidden within chaos. In the beginning, it was impossible to separate anything. Everything came together, pushing, confusing, but little by little, something changed, as if my mind started to adjust, recognizing patterns to distinguish. One voice stood out from the others, no higher, but clearer, nearest. As if it had always been there, waiting for the right moment. "You took your time." The phrase echoed inside me with an uncomfortable familiarity. I tried to respond, but I didn't know how. There was no mouth, there was no sound. It was pure thought, no barriers. "Who are you?" I thought. The answer did not come immediately. but the feeling does. Recognition not from someone I knew, but something that has always been part of me. We are not separate. The sentence came calmly. No threat, no urgency, and yet it carried a weight that was impossible to ignore. My body was still in the real world, but inside everything seemed to move too fast. Memories began to emerge, not like ordinary souvenirs, but like fragments that were never mine. Fields burning, people running, symbols set in stone, and voices, always voices, guiding, calling, demanding. I forced my mind against it, trying to get back, trying to keep control, but it was like trying to hold water with your hands. The more I resisted, but I escaped. You can't deny what already is. The voice returned firmer now, like, "You're testing my limits, I'm not." That I thought hard, and this time there was a reaction. Not external, but internal. One pressure, as if something inside me had been compressed. Rejected, denied, so try it. The answer came almost like a challenge, and at the same moment, the images changed. Now they weren't fragments, it was a complete scene. I saw the village. My village, but not as I knew. The houses, they were on fire, the sky filled with smoke, and men, those same men moving between everything, silent, efficient, erasing, as they had said, containing. And in the middle of it all, a younger, much younger stopped. No fear, no reaction, observing as if that wasn't wrong. As if it were necessary, I tried to look away, but I couldn't, because that wasn't just a vision, it was a memory, the voice stated. And this time, there was no doubt I felt the body react in the real world. Heavy breathing, tense muscles, but I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't get out, because something held me there, something that didn't come from outside. It came from me. You didn't run away from that night, you were spared. The phrase fell like a weight impossible to ignore. Spared. Why, I thought, but deep down, I already knew that the answer wouldn't be simple, because you were part of it. The silence that came after was absolute. No other voice, no other images, just that truth slowly spreading inside me. I always thought I had escaped, that my mother saved me, that I was just a child in the middle of something bigger. But no, I was left, maintained, saved, and that changed everything. When I finally managed to open my eyes, the world came back abruptly. The room, the stone, the dim light, the man still there watching me, attentive, as if I expected exactly that reaction. I fell to my knees, unable to support my own weight. Uncontrolled breathing, mind still stuck between two places. "Did you see?" he asked. His voice seemed distant, almost irrelevant compared to what still echoed inside me. I looked up slowly, confused, but with a clarity I've never had before. It wasn't a question that came out. It was a broken statement. I didn't survive, he didn't respond, but I didn't need, because the truth was already there, entire, heavy, inescapable. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what they wanted to do to me. I was scared of what I really was. The man didn't look away. When I said there, he just nodded. Almost like I finally reached the point where they needed me to get to. Not with words, but with understanding. The difference was brutal. Before I questioned now, I started to accept, even if you don't want to, even fighting every part of it. "You understand now," he said. It wasn't a question, it was a confirmation. I remained kneeling for a few seconds, trying to reorganize my thoughts. But there was no order possible, yet everything seemed out of place. Memories that weren't mine still burned in my mind. And the voices, they hadn't gone away, they were just quieter, observing, waiting. I slowly stood up, feeling heavy, as if I had crossed something much larger than that space. If I'm part of this, I spoke with a firmer voice than I expected. So why did they hide me? Why did they let me live like nothing? The man took a deep breath before answering. Because he weren't ready. The word sounded different now, more dangerous. And who decides this? He didn't hesitate. We, of course, always them. Always someone deciding what I could or couldn't be. The revolt rose quickly, hot family. But this time it came with something new. Something colder, more calculated, and if you're wrong, I took a step forward without realizing. The man didn't back down, but he didn't react either, as if I was expecting exactly that. "Then we will have a problem," he replied. Simple. Direct, no open threat, but with something much heavier implicit. I stared at him for a few seconds, trying to measure how far I could go. How far could I press? But before I said anything, the pain came without warning, no transition. A violent pressure inside the head, like something is being forced to make room. I put my hand to my temple, trying to contain it, but it was useless. The voices returned stronger, nearest, talking at the same time, but now I understood each of them. They weren't random thoughts. They were fragments, parties, consciousnesses that should not coexist. And yet they were there inside me. "He is resisting," one of them said. Not with common words, but with a clear intention. "This will break him." Another responded, "Wrong. This will define." The pain increased. My body gave in again. This time, I couldn't stand. I fell hard to the ground, feeling my breath hitch for a moment. The man finally moved, but not to help me. He just watched more closely, analyzing, as if my every reaction was exactly what he needed to see. Stop, I thought, with everything I had, not as requested, but as order. And for a second, everything was silent, not completely, but enough the pain lessened. The voices retreated, not submissive, but contained. I remained on the floor trying to understand what had just happened. There wasn't total control, but it wasn't chaos either. It was something in between. Something new he saw. I knew you saw. Because when I looked up, his expression had changed. It was no longer just analysis. There was something there. Caution, interest, maybe even worry. Did you hear them? He said, in a low tone. I didn't respond right away. But this time, there was no reason to deny. I nodded, and not only did I hear it, I said it with difficulty. They heard me too. The silence that followed was unlike any that had come before. Denser, most significant, as if that changed the entire nature of the situation. He stood up slowly, keeping his eyes on me. The whole time this wasn't expected. He muttered, more to himself than to me. And it was at that moment that I understood something essential. They knew a lot, but they didn't know everything, and that was the first real advantage I had since it all started. I placed my hands on the floor and stood up again, ignoring the tremor in my body. If you think you can control this, I said, facing him directly. They are more lost than me. He didn't respond right away, but the look in his eyes confirmed what I already suspected, maybe for the first time. I wasn't just the object of that place. Maybe I was the mistake in mistakes. They don't follow rules. They break everything around, including those who believe they are in control. His gaze lingered on me longer than before. There was no longer that absolute security. Something had changed, and we both knew it. He took a step closer, slow, controlled, as if any sudden movement could cause something unpredictable. You need to understand one thing, he said, the voice still firm, but now with an almost imperceptible tension. What's inside you is not new. It's just incomplete. The word was in the air, incomplete, like I was half of something they hadn't finished putting together yet, or worse, something that was broken on purpose. And now it was coming back the wrong way. I kept my eyes on him. No backing down without deviating. And who completed this before me? I asked because someone had to exist before someone who made you create all this. He hesitated, and that little delay was enough. It was confirmation they had seen this before. If you ever dealt with something similar, maybe worse, you don't need that answer now, he said, trying to take back control. But it was too late. I took another step forward. Even with the body still unstable, yes I do, because if this has already happened. So you're not trying to understand, they are trying to prevent it from happening. Again, the silence that followed was heavy loaded, and this time he didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to, but why couldn't the voices inside me reacted immediately, as if that conclusion activated something they remember? One of them whispered, not with clear words, but with a certainty that crossed my mind. They are afraid another completed, and this feeling spread inside me. Not as an ordinary emotion, but like a shared echo, a collective understanding. I felt something grow in my chest. It wasn't pride, not trust, it was power. Crew, unstable, but real. The man realized I saw it in the way he adjusted his posture and the slight recoil. Almost imperceptible. You're misinterpreting, he said, but the voice itself no longer held the same authority. I tilted my head, analyzing every detail of him, every micro-movement, every breath, and for the first time, I wasn't trying to survive. I was trying to understand how to use that. So explain to me, I replied without raising the tone. No rush if I'm wrong, correct? He didn't speak, and that said more than any answer. The pain came back, but different this time. It was not invasive. It was like a growing pressure, something organizing, lining up. The voices were no longer in conflict. They were agreeing, as if they were reaching a silent agreement. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling it adjust inside me. And when I opened it again, the world looked slightly different, sharper, slower. I was able to notice details that previously went unnoticed. The sound of his breathing, slight tremor in the left hand, tension in the shoulders. He also felt the change, I knew, because this time he didn't try to hide it. What did you do? He asked. Now there was something clear in his voice, caution. I didn't respond right away, because the truth was too simple. I didn't do anything. I just stopped fighting, and that changed everything. I took a step to the side, testing, feeling the space, and the voices followed, not guiding, but reacting like an extension of me. Or maybe I was their extension. If you don't know what I am, I finally spoke. So maybe the problem was never me. He frowned slightly, processing, trying to regain ground, but now it was different because the advantage was no longer just on his side. The chains on the wall called my name. Tension, not for what they were, but for what they represented. Control, containment, fear. I walked over to them, slowly running my hand across the cold metal, feeling the texture, the resistance, and something inside me responded. Not as a souvenir, but as a recognition. This has been used before, one of the voices murmured, but not on you. I stopped. This part was different. More specific, more targeted, in whom I thought, and for the first time there was. Complete silence, no response, no echo, nothing, as if even that had a limit that couldn't be crossed. I released the chains and turned back to him. Now I understand one thing, I said. You are not testing me, they're trying to measure how much time they have left. His face hardened, and there was no denial, there was no attempt to correct. Only acceptance, cold, calculated. So tell me, he answered. Finally, with the lowest voice, more controlled than ever. How long do you think we have? I held his gaze for a few seconds, feeling everything inside me in silence. No conflict, no chaos, for the first time in unstable equilibrium, enough for an honest answer. Less than you expected and more than I need. He held my gaze for a few seconds after my response. No immediate reaction, no denial, and it confirmed what I already felt growing inside me. They were late, they have always been, they just didn't know how much. He took a deep breath and took a step back. I don't like retreat, but as someone who needed distance to think. So, that's it, he said. In a low tone, you believe you are already above control. I didn't respond at the time because it wasn't exactly that. It wasn't about being above, it was about not fitting in anymore, and that was different. I slowly walked through the space, feeling each movement as if I was learning my own body all over again. Because in a way, each step was accompanied by a clearer perception, sharper. The voices didn't speak, but they were present. Pay attention. As if they were watching with me. I don't think I finally said I feel, and you can't measure that. He narrowed his gaze, analyzing, weighing every word as if trying to find some flaw, any loophole. But there was no, because that wasn't an argument, it was a finding. You are still within these walls, he replied. And that means we can still act. I stopped. I slowly turned. To face in. And for the first time I smiled. Not for trust, but for understanding. No, I said, that means you still need to try. Silence fell between us like a blade. Need cold definitive. The voices reacted not with words, but with an expansion. As if something inside me recognized that moment as a turning point. Something was taking hold. It was no longer unstable. As before, it wasn't complete yet, but it was no longer fragmented, he realized. Of course you noticed. I saw it in the way his eyes darted around the room as if calculating possibilities, roots, consequences. So let's stop pretending, he said. Suddenly the voice is firmer again, more direct. You are not the first. The phrase stayed in the air, heavy loaded with everything that wasn't being said, but you're the only one who made it this far. It changed. Something inside me, not as a surprise, but as confirmation. They had tried before, others like me. Others who failed. Others who were contained or destroyed. And I was on the edge, where they couldn't control it anymore. What happened to the others? I asked. He didn't respond immediately. But this time I felt something different coming from him. It wasn't fear, it was memory they couldn't sustain. That's all he said, sustain. The word echoed as if that were the key to everything. It wasn't about having the power. It was about putting up with him. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of it settle inside me. So it's not about who I am. Primera, sa, ide, slowly. It's about how long I can keep being. He nodded. For the first time, without resistance, without trying to control the narrative. Yes, just like that, and extremely complicated. Because now I understood the true risk. It wasn't them destroying me. It was me getting lost inside it. Dissolve, become just one of the voices. Or something worse, something formless. No control, but still, even with this clarity, I didn't feel afraid. Not like before. What I felt was decision. I took a step towards the door, not to leave, but to feel the limit. To test the air. Felt different there. Denser. As if there were an invisible barrier. I raised my hand, slowly approaching the space ahead, and the moment my fingers touched the void, something responded, a light vibration, almost imperceptible, but enough. I didn't force. Not yet. I just observed. I absorbed. I learned. There's more than stone here, I said. Without looking at him, he doesn't go. It was never just a cell. Of course not. Nothing there was simple. Nothing there was improvised. Everything had been done with purpose, afraid with experience. And that only reinforced one thing. They had faced something like this before, and they lost. I slowly lowered my hand, looking back at him. So, that's the difference, I said. You are trying to prevent me from becoming what others have become. And at the same time, they don't know what I'll become. He kept silent, but the answer was there, and everything in place. And the way they acted, and the way they hesitated, and that was enough. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the voices now quiet, aligned, waiting, not by command, but by decision mine. When I opened it again, there was no longer any doubt. There was no more denial. Only one way. Still undefined, but inevitable. And for the first time since it all began, I wasn't being taken. I was choosing where to step. I remained silent for a few seconds after, opening my eyes. Not because there was a lack of thoughts, but because there was too much clarity. Everything that previously seemed fragmented now began to organize itself in a precise way. Cold, functional, the voices didn't disappear, but they stopped competing. They were lined up. Not as something separate from me, but as parties that finally accepted the same center. I took a deep breath, feeling the air. Feel my chest differently, heavier, more real, and when I let go, it was as if something inside me had definitely adjusted. The man was still there, observing, waiting, but there was no longer the same relationship between us. Before he analyzed now, he assessed risk. "This changes everything," I said calmly, no rush, no tension. He didn't respond right away, but his gaze remained fixed, intense. "So say," he finally said. "What do you think happens now?" I slowly walked through space once again. Not without a doubt, but by choice, feeling every detail as if you were recording everything. The stone, the air, the invisible energy that kept that place running. "You brought me here to understand," I said, "but they're past that point now. They're trying to decide." He crossed his arms lightly as if he wanted to maintain some kind of posture. Decide what I stopped facing him, and this time there was no longer any trace of hesitation. If they keep me alive, or if they try to erase me, before it's too late. The silence that followed was absolute. Heavy, no room for disguise, because that was the simplest truth. And more dangerous, he didn't deny, did not correct, he just held his gaze. And that was enough. I felt the voices react differently. Not like before, not like echo or pressure, but as a conscious presence. Pay attention, ready not to take control, but to act together. For the first time, I wasn't fighting them, not even being dragged by them. I was with them, and that changed everything. "You can still miss it," he said, suddenly, the lowest voice. Almost like a warning, or maybe one last try. "Losing control, lose yourself." I tilted my head slightly, analyzing. But there was no longer any doubt. "Contra wasn't the point," I replied. "Never been. Your mistake was thinking that this needed to be controlled." The words came out, natural, effortless, as if they were ready a long time ago. And in that moment I realized I was no longer reacting to what was happening. I was understanding before it even happened. A silent anticipation, constant. The man slowly uncrossed his arms, and for the first time since he entered there, he looked uncertain, not lost, but out of advantage. "This doesn't end well," he said. "Not for you, maybe," I replied, "but it doesn't end well for you either." And that was the difference. Before I wanted to get out of their escape. Now I understood that this was not a place. It was a point A. Limit and limits exist to be crossed. I walked again to the point where I had felt the barrier. The air became denser as before. But this time I didn't stop. I raised my hand and I touched the answer. Came immediately stronger in. Invisible resistance, pressing back, testing. I closed my eyes for a second. Not to concentrate, but to feel the voices didn't speak. But they were there, firm, aligned. And I understood it wasn't about strength. Never been. It was about completely accepting. No fragment, no recoil. I took one more step. Even with the pressure increasing, the body reacted, tense muscles, heavy breathing, but the mind was calm. And then I didn't push the barrier. I stopped resisting her, and in that moment, something gave way. Not outside, but inside. The pressure disappeared as if it never existed. I opened my eyes and the feeling was clear. The limit was still there. But not for me. I crossed one simple step, silent, definitive. Behind me, the man moved fast for the first time. Wait. But there was nothing more to wait. I turned just enough to look aside. "No rush, no urgency. You were right about one thing," I said. The firm voice stable. "I'm not the first." I took a short break, feeling every word before continuing. "I won't break, but I'm the first." There was no response because there was no argument. There was no control left. Only consequence. And as I walked down the hallway beyond that cell, feeling the space open up, feeling the world bigger than before, a single certainty was established absolutely within me. I wasn't saved that night. I was saved, and now I finally understood why.